My name is Rogelio Briones. That's my given name. I was born in a small town called La Hacienda in the state of Aguascalientes in Mexico. It's it's about 200 miles north of Mexico City. I grew up there until about the age of 8, I believe. And then we migrated to the border, to Juarez. I lived in Juarez for 4 years, and then I jumped the border in 1962. Legally, we walked across. Then we settled in Las Cruces, New Mexico. That's where my grandparents on my mother's side, my uncles were. So I enrolled in 4th grade. So all my schooling was in Las Cruces from 4th grade all the way to high school. Graduated in 1969 from Mayfield High, the Mayfield Trojans. And then I enrolled at New Mexico State University. You know, everything evolves and it changes. For me, at this present time, I identify myself as a Mexica Tenochca. I try to follow the Mexica Tenochcas are better known as the Aztecs. So that was our original culture before the Western Europeans arrived in Mexico. So it's interesting because for me anyway, you go full circle. So I lived it as a child, and then I left it, and now I'm back to it, and I see the beauty in it. Therefore, I consciously identify with the indigenous people, and in particular, in my case, it's the Mexica Tenochca, the Aztecs, that I identify with. I mean, like I say, depending on your circumstances, things change, or they change for me. I was a Mexican in Mexico. I migrated to the United States. Right away, I knew I didn't fit in, or I didn't belong, because I didn't have the language. My culture was different. Even though in Las Cruces there's a lot of Chicanos, I suppose, that speak the language. But I knew even with them I didn't fit in. So you attempt to assimilate. So I attempted to assimilate, to fit in, and so I did try to lose the accent. But then when I enrolled at New Mexico State, that's when I got active in the Chicano movement. And that's when I went back to the indigenous of being a Mexican. I rediscover it. When I was trying to fit in, you kind of let go of it, and you try to hide it, or you're even ashamed of it. But then the Chicano movement, when I got active in it, it reinforced, because the Chicano movement, one of the tenets was that you would reattach yourself to your indigenous past. So then I rediscovered the beauty of it,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm at right now. Well, as you know, in the public schools, even today, I mean, it's shameful. Like our history is never told, It's like we don't count. As a person of color, you as a person of color, our history, our narrative is never being taught in the schools. And that's the way it was in Las Cruces, So when I enrolled in Mexico State, there were 2 camps. There were 2 Chicano groups, and in New Mexico State. The Chicanos from the north, and by the north I mean like from Belen, north up to Chama and Taos, Tres Piedras, Las Vegas. Those were los norteños. And then from there south to the border, there was a different group. The norteños identified, and I think to this day, even the people here in the valley identify with being Spanish. From the south, we all identify as being Mexicans because we descended, all our parents, grandparents came up from Mexico and settled the area. So, I identified with the Mexicans, so I was part of that group. But we were, we were asking for equality at the university in the sense that our history be taught, our culture would be taught. This is '69. I mean, there was nothing. I think there was a limited Chicano studies program at NMSU, but it wasn't very strong. Then from there in '73, I transferred to Adams State, and there was some activism here on campus. There was a UMAS chapter on campus, a pretty active, a club, if you will, But at that time, there was a boycott going on, we were trying to support Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Worker Union. And they were calling for boycotts of lettuce and grapes and Gallo wines. Because Gallo wine, that corporation and all of the grape growers and the lettuce growers in California in particular refused to sign an agreement with the union, so then they put out a nationwide boycott, to help the farm workers, to end the exploitation of the farm workers in the field, help us by not purchasing grapes, by not purchasing lettuce, nor Gallo wines. So that was going on at Adams State at that time. We were boycotting Safeway, for example. So there was activism going on campus when I arrived. And see, I transferred in '73 to become a teacher. So from '73 to '75, I went to San Luis. And I was learning to become a teacher. We would teach half a day in the morning, and then in the afternoons we would drive back to Adams State and take classes to fulfill our requirements to get our teaching degree. In '75 I graduated, and I went to graduate school here at Adams State in 1976. I got my master's degree. Then I left for 1 year to go on a Ford Foundation fellowship, and then I came back in 1977 to Adams State University. At that time it was college. And that's when I became faculty sponsor of UMAS on campus. Because each club had to have, they were required to have a faculty sponsor. So I became, that was, I would lead, not necessarily lead, but give direction to the students, and then help, and help them accomplish as a group what they were trying to accomplish. We demanded that they would establish a Chicano Studies department, which they never did, and I don't know what the situation is now. I don't know the extent of how large the department is now. I'm glad that they have it, but we struggle for that. And again, it goes back to the notion that, our history is not being taught. Our contributions, not only that, we were here first.
Right.
You know, you've heard that adage from the Chicano movement. We didn't come to the United States. The United States came to us. We didn't cross the border crossed us.
Right.
So if anybody belongs, it's us. And now we're strangers in our own homeland. Our culture doesn't matter, our language doesn't matter, our history doesn't matter. It's not being taught, it's being ignored. They keep giving us this narrative that we came from the 13 colonies. They go, what? You know? You know, we used to say in those days, you know, George Washington is not my father. Are you kidding me? Wooden teeth, George Washington, town destroyer, as the Native Americans would call him. He's not our father. But we were completely ignored. So our activism was, look, we were going to administrations and saying, look, you need to institute a Chicano studies program so that our history can be taught, you know. Our students that identify and come to campus, there's nothing for them, you know. So we were fighting to establish. There was a few Chicano studies classes, but they never established a department. It was never offered as a major. You know, you could minor in it or take a few classes in it, but it was never, you know. So that became our activism. In fact, I was the chairman of the Chicano Studies Concilio, a council designed specifically to put pressure on the administration to institute a Chicano Studies program. There's still a lot of inequalities, but there's definitely been, in my opinion, very definite changes. For example, I went to school in Las Cruces, and that's only 40 miles from the border. You know, I would say 99% of the Chicanos in Las Cruces speak Spanish. I mean, if you're a Chicano from Las Cruces and you can't speak Spanish, you're definitely the exception. But at that time, we were all trying to be as white as possible. You know, we were trying to assimilate. So the definite changes that I saw that the Chicano movement brought was that all of a sudden it facilitated us being proud of ourselves again, where we have been shamed, you know, and it's, you know, mass media, television, movies, the radio, and so on, you know. It just, after a while, you lose sight of who you really are, and you try to become someone else. And the Chicano movement said, hey, wait a minute, be proud of what you are. Be proud of your ancestors. Be proud of being indigenous. Although, you know, I've said it before, you know, I have plenty of European blood, Western European blood, but I also have indigenous blood, you know. And at one time, in my opinion, we were ashamed to identify with the Indian because we had been taught that the Indian was a savage, was lazy, illiterate, uneducated, uncultured. And the Chicano movement said, no, that's not true. Look at the beauty that's right there in front of you. And it made you become aware of it and embrace it again. You know, that's a very important change that the Chicano movement, just like the black movement did for the blacks, you know, just like the American Indian movement did for the Indians, you know. The women's movement, you know, even the gay movement, you know, because society in many ways tries to make you ashamed of yourself, and it's only when you unite and you coalesce all the energy that you have the strength to say, hey, I'm okay, I'm a beautiful person too, and my people are beautiful. In fact, you know, I've made other presentations. I mean, for me, and of course I'm biased, indigenous ways are far more superior for me than Western European ways. European ways are like, whew. And I'll speak about that during my presentation more of it. Western Europeans are violent, to say the least. So, you know, that's one of the really important changes that the Chicano movement enabled, you know, to regain, you know, our sense of awareness. We never received, I don't think we ever received any resistance from the student population. In fact, I think they supported us. We were real active. For example, Russell Means from the American Indian movement came to speak. Harry Edwards, the black man that organized the 1968 Olympic boycott when John Carlos and Tommy Smith, he came to campus to speak. And he was basically speaking about how black athletes are used by universities for their own gain, you know. So Harry Edwards' message was, look, use your physical abilities, but don't forget the mind, because the mind needs exercise too. So we had Reyes Lopez Tijerina, the love woman, was here. We had Thomas Banyanya, the Hopi interpreter, came on campus. We organized, we the Chicanos, along with the native students, we organized probably the first and only Indian powwow to ever take place on campus at Rex Gym. That's where we used to have, it was pretty run down. That's where they gave us a space so we could have an office for the UMAS Club. So we used that whole gym area and we filled it with drums. You know, we had a powwow. So we were, Jose Angel Gutierrez from the Raza Unida Party came to speak. So we were active and we wanted to bring people to present different points of view, you know, for the entire student population. You know, our struggle was not against the students; it's always against the administrations and the trustees.